our Mrs. Dollery," he said, "but though I've been to Great Hintock, and Hintock House half a dozen times, I'm at fault about the small village. You can help me, I dare say." She assured him that she could, that as she went to Great Hintock her van passed near it, that it was only up the lane that branched out of the lane into which she was about to turn just ahead. "Though," continued Mrs. Dollery, "'tis such a little small place that as a town gentleman you'd need to have a candle and lantern to find it if you don't know where it is. Bedad, I wouldn't live there if they paid me to. Now at Great Hintock you do see the world a bit." He mounted and sat beside her, with his feet outside, where they were ever and anon brushed over by the horse's tail. This van, driven and owned by Mrs. Dollery, was rather a movable attachment of the road than an extraneous object, to those who knew it well. The old horse, whose hair was of the roughness and colour of heather, whose leg joints, shoulders, and hoofs were distorted by harness and drudgery from colthood, though if all had their rights he ought, symmetrically in outline, to have been picking the herbage of some eastern plain, instead of tugging here, had trodden this road almost daily for 20 years. Even his subjection was not made congruous throughout, for the harness being too short, his tail was not drawn through the crupper, so that the breeching slipped awkwardly to one side. He knew every subtle incline of the 7 or 8 miles of ground between Hintock and Sherton Abbas, the market town to which he journeyed, as accurately as any surveyor could have learnt it by a dumpy level. The vehicle had a square black tilt which nodded with the motion of the wheels, and at a point in it over the driver's head was a hook to which the reins were hitched at times, when they formed a catenary curve from the horse's shoulders. Somewhere about the axles was a loose chain, whose only known purpose was to clink as it went. Mrs. Dollery, having to hop up and down many times in the service of her passengers, wore, especially in windy weather, short leggings under a gown for modesty's sake, and instead of a bonnet, a felt hat tied down with a handkerchief to guard against the earache to which she was frequently subject. In the rear of the van was a glass window, which she cleaned with a pocket handkerchief every market day before starting. Looking at the van from the back, the spectator could thus see, through its interior, a square piece of the same sky and landscape that he saw without, but intruded on by the profiles of the seated passengers, who, as they rumbled onward, their lips moving and heads nodding in animated private converse, remained in happy unconsciousness that their mannerisms and facial peculiarities were sharply defined to the public eye. This hour of coming home from market was the happy one, if not the happiest of the week for them. Snugly ensconced under the tilt, they could forget the sorrows of the world without, and survey life and recapitulate the incidents of the day with placid smiles. The passengers in the back part formed a group to themselves, and while the newcomer spoke to the proprietress, they indulged in a confidential chat about him as about other people, which the noise of the van rendered inaudible to himself and Mrs. Dollery, sitting forward. "'Tis Barber Percombe, he that's got the waxen woman in his window at the top of Abbey Street," said one. "What business can bring him from his shop out here at this time, and not a journeyman hair-cutter, but a master barber that's left off his pole 'cause there's not genteel?" They listened to his conversation, but Mr. Percombe, though he had nodded and spoken genially, seemed indisposed to gratify the curiosity which he had aroused, and the unrestrained flow of ideas which had animated the inside of the van before his arrival was checked thenceforth. Thus they rode on till they turned into a half-invisible little lane, whence, as it reached the verge of an eminence, could be discerned in the dusk, about half a mile to the right, gardens and orchards sunk in a concave, and, as it were, snipped out of the woodland. From this self-contained place rose in stealthy silence tall stems of smoke, which the eye of imagination could trace downward to their root on quiet hearthstones festooned overhead with hams and flitches. It was one of these sequestered spots outside the gates of the world, where may usually be found more meditation.